looked like everything was going right. A few weeks of dates that felt different, long conversations, the texts that came at the right times, a weekend together that didn't feel forced. You started letting yourself believe this might actually be something. And then, somewhere between 3 and 6 months in, you felt the temperature drop. The texts started coming slower. The vulnerability disappeared from their voice. They were busy with work in a way they hadn't been before. When you asked if everything was okay, they said yes, but the yes didn't sound like the person you'd been getting to know. It sounded like someone closing a door, slowly, while telling you they weren't. You probably blamed yourself, or you blamed them, or you decided they had commitment issues, or were emotionally unavailable, or never really cared in the first place. But the truth is more specific than any of those. What you were watching is called avoidant deactivation. It has its own logic, its own timing, and its own quiet pain underneath. And once you can see what's actually happening, the cold doesn't look like cold anymore. Avoidant attachment gets misunderstood in a specific way. Most of the time, when people describe an avoidant partner, they describe someone who doesn't care, someone cold, someone who runs from intimacy because they're shallow, or selfish, or incapable of love. That description is so common, it's become the default explanation for any partner who pulls away. It's also almost completely wrong. Avoidant people are not unable to feel. They are not low emotion. They are not, in most cases, deliberately distant. Inside, the emotional experience is happening. Research shows their bodies register attachment distress just as strongly as anyone else's. The heart rate goes up. The cortisol spikes. The nervous system reacts. What's different is what their system does next. A securely attached person, when they feel attachment-related distress, moves toward the source of safety. They reach out, they talk, they look for closeness, because closeness is what their nervous system was taught is the solution. An anxiously attached person does the same thing, more intensely. They reach harder, they pursue, they escalate until the distress is resolved. An avoidantly attached person does something different. They suppress. Quietly, automatically, often without conscious awareness, their system shuts the feeling down. The need for closeness is registered. And then it's pushed underground before it can fully surface. This is called a deactivating strategy. And it's the thing nobody tells you about avoidant attachment. The cold you're seeing isn't an absence of feeling. It's the visible surface of an enormous internal effort to keep the feeling from showing up. Two researchers, Mikulincer and Phillip, have spent decades mapping what's actually happening inside avoidant attachment. Their work has produced one of the most counterintuitive findings in modern attachment research. In a series of experiments, Mikulincer and his colleagues asked participants to suppress thoughts about loss, separation, and abandonment. People with avoidant attachment did this remarkably well. Their reaction times, their physiological measures, their self-reports, all showed successful suppression. The thoughts were under control. Then the researchers added a twist. They asked the same participants to do the suppression while also performing a demanding cognitive task, something that occupied their working memory. Under low cognitive load, the avoidant participants suppressed normally. But under high cognitive load, the suppression collapsed. The previously hidden material came flooding back. The thoughts the avoidance system had been keeping out of awareness suddenly broke through. Brain imaging showed elevated amygdala activity. The distress was there. It had always been there. The avoidance system had just been spending enormous resources keeping it off stage. This finding changes everything about how you understand avoidant behavior. The avoidant person isn't experiencing less. They're working harder, constantly, to feel less. The cool, controlled exterior is not the absence of inner life. It's the visible expression of a sophisticated and exhausting internal management system. And here's where it connects to what happens in relationships. Early in a relationship, the avoidance system is calm. There's no threat to manage yet. The closeness hasn't grown to the point where it triggers the deactivation. The avoidant person can be warm, expressive, even open. This is a real version of them. It's not a performance. It's what their system looks like when the alarm hasn't gone off. Then, somewhere between 3 and 6 months in, the relationship reaches a threshold. It's not always a single moment. Sometimes it's a buildup of moments. Saying I love you, talking about moving in together, meeting each other's families, realizing this person could actually become long-term. The closeness that was theoretical becomes real. And the avoidant nervous system, which has been quiet, suddenly activates the way it was trained to activate. The deactivation begins, not consciously, The avoidant person doesn't decide to pull back. They start finding reasons. I've been busy. I'm not feeling like myself. I need a little space. I don't think I'm in the right headspace right now. The reasons feel real to them because they are real at the surface. But underneath the surface, a much older system is running. A system that learned decades ago that needing someone too much is dangerous. That closeness, when it grows beyond a certain point, becomes a threat to protect against. The cold isn't punishment, it's protection. The wall isn't a rejection of the person on the other side. It's a defense against a feeling the avoidant system was taught long ago never to fully feel. Here's how this looks from the outside. The early phase, as we said, is genuine. The avoidant is engaged, responsive, even enthusiastic. They might say things like, "I've never felt this way before," or "I usually need more space than this, but with you, it's different." And they mean it. At that stage, it really is different. The system hasn't activated. Then comes the threshold. From the partner's perspective, it often looks sudden. 1 week, everything is fine. The next week, something is off. The texts are shorter. The presence feels distracted. The avoidant says they're fine when asked, but the fine feels mechanical. If the partner pushes for clarity, the avoidant often gets more remote, not less. This is the part that makes people think they're dealing with someone heartless. The partner is reaching out, asking what's wrong, trying to repair. And the avoidant is responding with a kind of detached politeness. "Nothing's wrong, I'm just dealing with stuff. I need a few days to think." What's actually happening inside the avoidant is that the partner's reaching is making the deactivation harder to maintain. The closer the partner pushes, the more energy the avoidant has to spend suppressing the attachment system. The cool exterior isn't holding steady. It's being defended more and more intensely against an outside force that keeps making the inside louder. This is why pursuing an avoidant when they pull away almost never works. It's not that the avoidant doesn't love the person. It's that the pursuit is making it impossible for them to do the suppression their system needs in order to feel safe. The more the partner pushes for closeness, the more the avoidant has to push it down. Eventually, the avoidant either explodes outward or withdraws completely. There's another pattern that often follows the deactivation. Sometimes, weeks or months after the avoidant has pulled away, they reach back out. They miss the person. They've had enough distance that the closeness no longer feels threatening. The system has calmed down. They re-engage, often warmly, often surprised by their own feelings. The partner, especially if they're anxiously attached, experiences this as miraculous. Everything is back. The connection wasn't lost after all. There's a brief honeymoon period, and the relationship resumes. And then, when the closeness builds again, the deactivation cycle starts again. This is the rhythm of relationships with avoidant partners. Not coldness, but intermittent coldness. Not absence of love, but love that becomes unbearable past a certain point. The painful thing for partners is that the avoidant rarely sees this pattern, even after living it many times. The deactivation is so well defended, so deeply automatic, that the avoidant often experiences each instance as fresh. This time is different. This time, I really am just busy. This time, I really did just need space. The system protects itself, in part, by hiding from itself. It's tempting, when you've been on the receiving end of this pattern, to interpret it as a moral failure on the avoidance part. It isn't. And the framing that makes it look like one is also the framing that makes it impossible to understand. The avoidant nervous system was built in an environment where needing people too much had a cost. Sometimes the cost was direct. Caregivers who responded to vulnerability with annoyance, withdrawal, or punishment. Sometimes it was subtler. Caregivers who were technically present but emotionally absent, who handled their child's needs with a kind of cool efficiency that taught the child not to bring those needs forward in the first place. In either case, the lesson the child's nervous system drew was the same. You will be okay if you don't need too much. You will be safer if you can handle things on your own. The way to keep this connection working is to not test its limits. That's a sophisticated lesson for a child to learn. It's also a heavy one to carry into adulthood. The avoidant adult is not someone without feelings. They're someone who learned very early that feelings beyond a certain intensity were not safe to bring into relationships. The suppression became reflexive. The wall became automatic. By the time they grew up, the system was running in the background, keeping watch. When that adult falls in love, the love is real. The early connection is genuine, but somewhere underneath, the old system is still on duty, still scanning for the moment the closeness gets too close, still ready to deactivate when the feeling threatens to grow past the threshold the original environment taught was safe. The cold the partner experiences is the visible edge of all of this. It's not absence. It's a defense against a feeling the avoidant person, in some sense, was never given full permission to have. This doesn't make avoidant behavior easier to be on the receiving end of. It doesn't mean partners should stay in dynamics that hurt them. The reframe isn't an instruction to forgive everything or wait forever. It's just a clearer picture of what you're actually looking at. You're not looking at someone who never cared. You're looking at someone whose system learned a long time ago to manage care by limiting it. And what looks like a closing door is often someone behind it working very hard to keep something else from breaking through. The next time you watch someone go cold after getting close, you'll have a different picture of what's happening. You'll see the timing, how the withdrawal almost always tracks the depth of the connection. You'll see the language, how the reasons given feel real but never quite explain the size of the shift. You'll see the rhythm, how the cold is rarely permanent, how the warmth often returns, how the cycle repeats. What you won't see from the outside is the inside. The effort, the exhaustion, the system underneath the surface, working hard to keep the feeling from arriving fully. That part is invisible. It's invisible to most avoidants themselves, until much later in their lives, when something disrupts the suppression enough that the underneath starts to surface. Some avoidants get there. The deactivation softens. The wall thins. The capacity for sustained closeness slowly grows. Research and clinical practice both show this is possible, usually with the help of a partner whose presence is steady and non-pursuing, or with the help of therapy, or both. The system isn't fixed. It just changes much more slowly than the people around it would like. Some avoidants don't get there. The defense holds for a lifetime. The relationships keep ending the same way. The cycle never breaks. What you can know from the outside is that the cold is not what it looks like. It's not absence of love. It's the visible outline of a system designed to keep love from getting bigger than it was once safe to feel. The next video looks at a related pattern. What's actually happening when someone stonewalls you in the middle of a conversation? Why some people, in moments of conflict, seem to disappear behind a wall while still standing in the room with you. Stonewalling is often a more acute version of what we've been describing. And once you can see the system that builds it, the silences start to make a different kind of sense. For now, just this. The person who went cold on you wasn't punishing you. They were managing something old, in the only way their system ever learned how. The cold is real, but it isn't what it looks like.